Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Revenge Garden. I am Carmen Cook. Apologies for this video getting posted about an hour later than normal. I did not plan appropriately for daylight savings time, so it caught me a little off guard. But let's dive right in with Winter's Haunting Pledge by Leigh Edwards, which is book 2 of the Maidens of the Mystical Stone series. Bound by a magical pact made within a mystical stone circle, Rhiannon and her 3 friend souls were destined to switch bodies. They'd experienced each woman's fate for one season. She was presently living Selena's life, her dearest friend, and a harlot. Tonight, Rhiannon was more nervous than she'd ever been. She was finally to be with a man who paid to bed her. Unsettled, she sat in the chair, got up, paced, and then lay back on the bed. She stood and looked out the windows. She hoped the man would just arrive soon. Get it over with. She jumped on hearing muffled male voices outside the door. When it swung open, she slapped her hand over her mouth. Brocken, her husband and true love, entered the room and closed the door, looking flustered. He carried a bottle and wore a sheepish expression. Her heart leapt and then plunged. Oh, how she wanted to be with him. Yet he believed she was someone else. This confounded pact would be her ruin. Besides, if he was here with her now, he must have paid to have sexual relations with her best friend. Anger and jealousy now far outweighed her desire. Sir Brocken, what the hell are you doing here? He swallowed. Obviously, I've paid to be with you. You should be home with your wife. She barely resisted her habit of placing her hands on her hips. Don't get your damn hackles up, Selena. He shoved the bottle to her. I'm only here to talk. Talk? She shoved it back. God knows I need to speak with someone before I go completely mad. My wife certainly doesn't want to talk to me. The pain in his voice was clear and her heart softened. Sit down then. She pointed to the one chair. He sat on it and she chose the bed. He uncorked the wine and took a long swig. Rhiannon fought the urge to go to him, to pull his head to her bosom. He appeared deeply in need of comfort. Why isn't your wife talking to you? He snorted. Sure, your guess is as bloody good as mine. Since I returned, she doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to do much with me if I'm being truthful. She makes me feel like I'm a lustful fiend for wanting to bed her. She once wanted that just as much as me. You haven't bedded her? Rhiannon really didn't want to have this discussion. He peered at her disbelievingly. I was away for months and remained true to her all that time. I've been back nearly a moon, so of course, yes, I've bedded her. She is my wife, but she doesn't really seem to want... God's bones, I shouldn't be talking to you about this. He exhaled loudly. A harlot once told Rhiannon that they were much like priests. Men often confessed to them, and the women kept what they learned to themselves. Tell me if it'll make you feel better. He breathed deeply and drank more wine. Do you want some? He held it out to her. She took a couple sips before passing it back. We used to talk endlessly. He put his hands before him, baffled. Now Rhiannon barely says anything to me. She's cold and distant, like a stranger. She doesn't look at me the same. Her smile's different, and her eyes, I just can't put my finger on it. But there's not the sparkle that was there once. She permits the coupling, but only out of duty, and I think, and when she experiences pleasure, she acts like it's something to be ashamed of. He pressed his hands against his face. Christ, I really shouldn't be telling you all this. Men often come here to talk of their troubles. By God, I really never thought Rhiannon and I would have any troubles. Her heart ached at seeing his pain and confusion. How she longed to tell him about the soul switch, but the magical old crone had warned that it would put him in danger. I suppose I was foolish in thinking anything could stay as perfect as it was, he continued, sounding hopeless. Maybe we should speak of something else. Rhiannon had to distract herself from her jealousy, knowing Brocken had been intimate with her friend, and from being tempted to make love with him now, when, to him, she was Selena. Who's the other man outside the door? She changed the subject. Oliver Barlow. I sneaked in back and then paid him double to let me come to you. Maybe the two of you should have spent time together. He gave a humorless laugh. At least then I know he'd not be lusting after my wife. His blue eyes suddenly widened. By Christ, do you suppose they've been together? Is that why she's behaving so peculiar? Maybe they were carrying on while I was away. Yet she looks at that damn young Zachary with more interest than me, and she likely wouldn't tell him he's lascivious. Rhiannon shook her head. Your wife wouldn't be with anyone else, Brocken, she said softly. Rhiannon loves you. It felt so odd to speak of herself in the third person. I honestly don't feel confident in that any longer, Selena. His voice wavered. Could you maybe speak with her? If my wife doesn't love me anymore, I must know. Bloody hell, I'm not sure what I'd do about it, but I need to learn the truth. I'll try to talk to her, she said. He nodded. If you attend Saturday's market, I'll make sure she's there. She nearly reached out to stroke his stubbled jaw. Even in his vulnerable state, he was undeniably sensual. His tunic was partly open. Closing her eyes, she imagined his muscular chest and exhilarating scent, daring to recall the sensation of skin against hers. How it felt to have him inside her, jubilantly crying out as their bodies moved together. After months of celibacy, missing him and what they'd once shared, she was now unquestionably aroused. She went to the window, inhaling the cool night air. You look very pretty, by the way, he said. Oliver's down on his luck at not being with you tonight. She sniffed. You're very drunk. I am at that. Drank more than my share of ale before deciding to come to talk to you. At any rate, it's been nice having your company. He put the bottle to his mouth and guzzled the rest of the wine, then stood, teetering. Brocken, you can barely walk. Clearly, I can't stay the night when there's only one bed, he slurred. If Rhiannon finds out I was here seeing you, she wouldn't understand. Or maybe she wouldn't even care. But I'll be getting home now. Thanks, Selena. He patted her shoulder affectionately before starting towards the door unsteadily. Her entire body tingled from that one innocent touch. Wait, I'll walk you home. She reached for her shawl. I'm not so sardine drunk that I'll get lost. He gave her his much-loved smile, now a little lopsided from the drink. But you're welcome to walk with me. She opened the door, but when he staggered, she pulled his tall, brawny body to her, steadying him. Their eyes met and locked, and he looked at her as he had when she was actually herself. There was an unmissable mutual attraction. He glanced at the bed and then cleared his throat. I need to go, or... He stopped speaking, his voice husky. He moved from their embrace, but not before she'd felt the firmness of his manhood against her. Watching him leave, she prayed he'd make it back safely, wishing she could spend the night in his arms at home in their marriage bed. By God, she bemoaned, agreeing to this infernal pact. That is Winter's Haunting Pledge by Leigh Edwards. Now we're going to head over to Death by Greed by Abigail Keam. I was working on my bees when I heard a thunderous bellowing and smashing of wood. Baby, my English Mastiff, took off like a rocket into the neighboring field, barking and growling. He repeatedly ran back to me as if saying, Are you coming? Are you coming? Jumping into my golf cart, I followed Baby to one of my horse pastures, where I was stunned to see an enormous Texas Longhorn bawling out his poor, anguished heart. Frightened and angry, this behemoth had broken through my horse fence and was now snorting and tossing his head in protest at Comanche, a valuable breeding stallion which was rearing and neighing in fear and rage himself. I was beside myself, as I had given up boarding thoroughbred stallions because they proved to be ill-tempered. Comanche had been moved next door to Lady Ellesmere's farm, but temporarily relocated back with me as his pasture was being reseeded. The sight of Comanche tossing his mane and slashing the air with his dangerous hooves did nothing to deter the bull, who lowered his horns. That bull could gut Comanche with one tip of his powerful horn. Comanche lunged and then sidestepped the bull at the last moment, and the bull shook his head and roared, stomping the ground. The thoroughbred's actions had only incited the Longhorn into more fury. Both animals were a terrible sight to behold with their wrathful frenzy. What to do? I'd never come across this situation before. I knew the bull, feeling threatened, would and could, with those long horns, spanning 8 feet from tip to tip, kill that priceless thoroughbred. The horse was my responsibility since he was back in my care. My friend had invested every penny she had in that horse. I shuddered at the thought of Comanche being injured, and I knew I had to rescue that ebony steed, but how? I immediately ran to the stable for several buckets of sweet feed and hoisted the feed over the broken fence. I wrapped the buckets on the fence post to create a distraction. Hey, Bully Bull! Hey, there you are, Sonny! I've got some treats for you! The bull turned at the noise I was making, snorted, and pawed the ground. Now, I'm not familiar with cattle behavior, but I am smart enough to realize that snorting and pawing and lowering one's head means trouble in Texas Longhorn behavior 101. Sure enough, the bull charged. At me. I ran screaming into the stable with Baby close on my heels. I slammed the stable doors shut and put up the crossbar. True to his nature, the bull rammed the doors and almost knocked them off their hinges. Merde, I yelled. That's French for manure, and I was in deep at the moment. Baby and I ran through the stable and out the other side. Now, when I say run, that means a very fast walk for me as I limp on one leg and I'm over 50. Since Baby was a healthy English Mastiff, he left me high and dry. I don't blame him. I just wish I could run as fast as he did. I had to get help. Climbing over fences, not my strong suit, I managed to get to my neighbor, Lady Elsmere, where I could ask for assistance. I knew her farm manager, Mike, had a tranquilizer gun. As I ran, I could still hear the bull slamming its massive head into my stable doors. Boom! Boom! Thank goodness he was preoccupied with tearing up the stable. I hoped I had an intact barn once I got the beast under control. If we got him under control. I certainly didn't want to put that magnificent animal down. That is Death by Greed from Abigail Keam. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed both excerpts, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.